this episode is probably going to be the most emotional episode of My Hero Academia, and that's due to all of the additions made. So, let's go over those additions and really dive into why the episode is going to be so emotional. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Andrew, and I'm here to do my breakdown and review for My Hero Academia Season 8, the final season, Episode 7. And there's a lot that we really need to go over because this may be one of my longer breakdown videos. So, before we get into the breakdown, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, to subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as leave a like, as well as hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I upload more content like this. And with that out the way, let's just dive right into the episode. And to start off, the episode's titled From Aizawa, which takes its name from Manga Chapter 420, and this episode covers new material from Chapter 417, pages 11 to 15, as well as Chapters 418, 419, and 420. And how this episode is going to be a lot of emotional highs with not that much action, but great animation nevertheless. And speaking of animation, the episode begins from where the last episode left off, with Deku and Nana seeing Kotaro slap the color out of Tenko, where we get the sequence of Deku trying to help Tenko, but is stopped by an invisible wall as Nana realizes the extent of her actions of abandoning her son and how they have affected not just Kotaro, but as well as Tomura as well. And that when she comes to the realization of why Kotaro never got rid of the picture, she finally is able to break through the barrier to stop her son from hitting Tenko, as Deku is able to save Tomura. As this is the start of Deku seeing Tenko Tomura's origin. And there are a few things that I want to bring up when it comes to the anime. For instance, the anime adds to the sequence by having the invisible wall give off a purplish red hue when Deku interacts with it, and how that hue matches the color Nana represents inside of One for All. And the anime very much extends the sequence of Nana stopping Kotaro from hitting Tenko by focusing more on her in this moment, as the scene lingers on her expressions as we transition over to Tenko in the moment he decays Mo. And something that I like that the anime didn't do is animate the sequence or panel of Kotaro disappearing on his own, which from the manga implied that Kotaro was more than just a memory, which doesn't make sense in the context of this sequence. But from there, we begin to get to the crux of this episode, in my opinion, as well as the most anticipated interaction between Deku and Tomura. Because, very much like in the manga, we get Deku seeing Tenko decay his dog, as well as about to decay his sister. And before we actually see Deku jump in to stop this, we see that he recognizes this feeling from when Tomura woke up for the first time in Season 6, Episode 5, or Chapter 272 of the manga, where in the anime they add a visual flashback that connects these moments, as both situations take place in the Vestige world surrounded by the memories of Tomura Tenko's origin. And this addition is good because it really explains why Deku is feeling like this by giving a physical visual representation of that feeling. But the anime eventually does also show Deku breaking through to Tomura, very much like in the manga. However, they do add more color to the scene by having Tomura pushing back on Deku's ideals, being shaded more in a dark purple and black, as Deku is able to break through to Tomura, which leads to the world becoming white, as well as Deku losing his hands. But another additional color that they added to the sequence is actually to the energy on the scales, which is to distinguish the light from the darkness inside of Tomura, depicted by the light and dark energy. But going back to Deku losing his arms, in the manga, we don't see just energy bursting out of the decayed cracks, but we also get to see blood. While in the anime, it's more or less just the energy, and even the stubs of where his arms were are covered in energy. And this is just very much to how the anime and the manga differ in the depiction of decay. Because in the manga, it has been shown that decay is able to break down the body into pieces, as well as we see less blood from decay in the anime versus the manga. And finally, the anime makes some small additions to this scene to make it more emotional. We see that in the manga, Deku and Tomura's expressions don't change much. However, the anime shows that they are having a different range of emotions, including showing Deku crying with a more of a smile because he was finally able to break through to Tomura. As well as we do see Tomura in the Tenko form crying, which is not depicted in the manga. And that overall, the anime adds more facial expression and focuses more on each character's POV shots to add more emotional weight to this scene, which I think it does successfully. But that's not all that it does successfully, because we begin to get the emotional breakdown of Tomura as we see that Deku was able to throw away his hatred as well as his anger. But we also get to see how Tomura's past was able to shape his present and potential future. Because as we see that the anger and hatred is gone, we see that what remains is his want to be a hero, but for the villains. And that we get very much like in the manga, the flashback of Tenko playing with his friends, who were actually first mentioned as far back as season 7, episode 11, or chapter 361 of the manga, where their names were revealed as Mikun and Tomo, but the anime actually expands on this more, showing that they are playing hero, but as we see in the manga, time appears to be passing. The anime emphasizes that time passing via the clock moving faster and actually showing time change more in line with how fast the clock is moving. And how this small addition to the anime adds a little bit more symbolism to this moment. Because the passing of time and as fast as it's moving is showing that while Tomura still has aspects of Tenko inside of him, very much as time keeps moving forward, so has Tomura. He has moved past the Tenko that he was and has become the Tomura that he is now. Because over time, he no longer wants to be a hero, but he wants to be a villain. But by doing so, he's doing it because he wants to support his friends. So while certain things stay the same, things still changed over time. And we see that change as we see that Tomura Tenko has now become the older version of himself inside of this vestige world. And this would have been a great moment to end on. However, we have a major reveal coming that is going to literally shatter Tomura in this moment. And there are a lot of changes that are going to be made that pretty much makes this entire sequence surpass what it was in the manga. Because the reveal is that All For One orchestrated the entire existence of Tomura from his conception, his abuse, and even his quirk. And the anime really emphasizes the monster All For One is in this sequence in a few ways. For one, the anime extends and adds to the manifestation of All For One from the ground as he consumes Tomura. We see more of the world being destroyed in the anime. We get more of how All For One incorporates the broken vestige world into his body. And the anime even makes All For One have a full body made of the broken pieces of Tomura's memory and the vestige world instead of just the top half like in the manga, to make All For One look more monstrous and imposing. They even make small changes like having All For One be fully formed when revealing all of this information to Tomura as his body is being shattered, and the anime adds heavy distortion to All For One's voice as well as the static sound effects when we get the memories from All For One's perspective. And something else that I forgot to bring up is how All For One was able to mold Tomura into the person that he is now. A lot of the scenes in this moment was expanded upon. From the anime expanding the flashback scenes of Smoke Eater and Lariat, to even expanding upon All For One and Kotoro's conversation. Heck, they even expanded the moment of All For One and Tenko conversating when he actually gave Tenko decay in that moment. So the anime in this moment not only added a lot more, but expanded this moment to be as good as it is. And all of this was done to emphasize the final moments of Tomura as All For One shatters Tomura, which was better visually in the manga, but the build-up being better in the anime. And a quick point that I want to bring out when it involves Tomura's quirk, because before Deku is kicked out of the world of All For One did reveal that decay was not Tomura's OG quirk, and that decay is the worst version of Overhaul, aka Kai Chisake's quirk, which makes sense due to the fact that the story has hinted that decay and Overhaul are similar in many ways, as well as we know for a fact that Kai Chisake was actually in one of Dr. Kudai Garaki's facilities, as well as was a potential second vessel for All For One. But I bring this up because it is revealed in the My Hero Academia Ultra Age, the final fan book, that Tomura's original quirk is actually the unnamed repulsive quirk that we see a lot more in the anime than in the manga, which is the quirk that has the yellow rings that are able to surround Tomura and send him moving forward or backwards with great force, and how that was actually his quirk. And it's very interesting that we're able to actually see how he would use his quirk if it wasn't for the interference of All For One. And I want to save this piece of information for now due to this is the reveal involving Tomura's decay not being his original quirk, and it made sense to bring up what his actual original quirk is here, even though we saw it earlier in the season. But here is where the emotional highs begin to go on a decline, but not necessarily in a bad way. Because as Deku is thrown out of the world of All For One, we see that both Deku and All For One have been heavily damaged, as All For One has lost decay and Deku his arms. And this is where I wanted to bring up Deku's arms being the worst that they've ever been, because they didn't censor this in the anime and we get to see the bloody stumps very much like how they were in the manga. And how if Deku doesn't die from the bloodlust of no longer having his arms, and as All For One is about to deliver the final blow on Deku, Sero, Ojiro, and Sato come in with the save as we get an added animation sequence of All For One tumbling back due to the force of Sato and Ojiro's hit, as we also get the reveal of the title drop of the episode, as well as Aizawa arriving on the scene. And yeah, the title drop doesn't come until very late in the episode, but that's because the episode is approaching its end. Because we then cut back 10 minutes earlier with the reveal of where Kurogiri brought Eraserhead and Present Mike. And like in the manga, Present Mike continues to punch Kurogiri as Aizawa stops him and confides in Present Mike that Kurogiri is both the light and the dark, as well as their friend Shirokumo, who is still in there, and how Shirokumo was a student of UA, so it's their duty as teachers to really show him down the right path and for him to quote-unquote graduate or to live up to his potential. And that their connection is still there because very much like in both the anime and the manga, everything plays out pretty much the same with only a small change. Where in both mediums, Kurogiri is able to be activated again thanks to their connection. However, in the manga, we see that Shirokumo makes up a smaller bit of the darkness and is barely visible inside of Kurogiri, while in the anime, Shirokumo is a lot more visible. Also, something else that I forgot to bring up is a few small changes, especially when it comes to Aizawa and Present Mike's conversation with Kurogiri, which is that the change between the anime and the manga is that in the manga, when they're talking about being heroes and allowing for their students to graduate from UA, we get a flashback to the past where they are students. However, the anime changes this entire sequence to be a bunch of random UA students. And most likely the reasoning for this change is to emphasize how they are now teachers and their goal is to push the next generation forward and make sure that they graduate, which ties into the context of what they're talking about with Kurogiri, aka Shirokumo, once being a student at UA, so it is in their job to try and help him in this moment as well. So it's a very nice change that I'm glad that the anime was able to make for this moment. And it's from here where the anime and the manga pretty much play out the same, with Aizawa returning to UA to recruit heroes, where Death Arms joins, as well as a cameo from Astro, who is one of the characters from Horikoshi's previous series, Barrage, as he's supposed to be a young hero in this evacuation center. As well as we do get, very much like in the manga and the anime, of the civilians lending the hero supplies, as well as we get a barely expanded upon sequence of the fight at Tokaba Arena, as the heroes begin to enter phase 3 of their plan. And with all of this being relatively the same, a small addition that they do make is that the portals that are being produced by Kurogiri Shirokumo are not purely black and have a very much more tangible light blue aesthetic to them, which is to represent Shirokumo playing a part, which could be implied from the manga, but is very much clearly shown in the anime. And as the episode comes to a close, we get, very much like in the manga, the reveal that Eri wanted her dream to be known as she wants to sing to Deku, and by doing so wants to help, and does so by cutting off part of her horn, which is actually used to help Deku recover his arms in a very well animated sequence of them coming back to what it was before he lost them in the Vestige world. As well as we get one final change between the anime and the manga, because in the manga, we have a change between the official Shonen Jump release in the magazine and the manga volume, where we have a few characters from Class 1A like Shoji, Momo, Mineta, Koda, and Kaminari coming out of one singular portal in both manga mediums. However, in the anime, what the anime shows is them coming out of different portals, as well as showing more members from Class 1A coming out of other portals, which include Jiro, Mina, Kirishima, Frokibi, Hagakure, as well as Aoyama. As we get the episode ending with these characters coming through the portal, as well as an anime original scene of Deku stopping his crying and getting a determined smile look on his face as the episode ends. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This episode may be a little bit longer and may be a little bit shorter. Has nothing to do with the fact that I had to record this episode twice. But overall, I very much enjoyed this episode. It had a lot of emotional moments, if not most of this episode being emotional moment. And while some people very much like the action that we've seen in the previous episodes, don't worry, from what we see with the previews, the next episode is going to be action-packed, especially since it's going to be another Rising episode. But overall, I enjoyed the episode, I enjoyed the emotional moments, and I really enjoyed the smaller changes made to the episode to really emphasize and increase the emotional impact of these moments. But hey, that's just my thoughts and breakdowns of this episode. So yeah, that's all I really have to say for this episode. So let me ask you this. How did you feel about the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And did you think that this episode would have been better with a little bit more action? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!